joined by Advocate Roshni Lachwani, media and entertainment lawyer at Intellexis Joints. Hi, thank you so much for joining us.
That's
My
right.
first question to you is, Supreme Court has said, when you commercialize speech, you cannot hurt the sentiments of a community. How do you interpret this remark legally?
So to add to it, legally, freedom of speech is a fundamental right, as we all know, but it's not an absolute one. There are a lot of restrictions with respect to unreasonable limitations on freedom of speech under the Constitution. We know that whether it is in the interest of public order, morality, and to prevent hate speech primarily. So now what the court is doing, it's primarily reminding us of, when speech crosses into the realm of commerce. So it requires a different dimension. It is no longer, just an individual expression, but a product being marketed, distributed, and consumed at scale. So what happens is, in this context, yes, comedians and creators who monetize their content may be held to a higher standard, much, like in the case of advertisements as well. So, for example, a company cannot promote a product by disparaging or offending a community, right? So, and similarly, a monetized creator also cannot, claim unfettered speech without acknowledging the impact of their words on the public. And this does not really mean that we are silencing humor or satire is being restricted, but primarily we're expecting brands to kind of self-censor themselves. Like we expect brands to self-censor advertising, we're also expecting creators and platforms to do the same.
Okay, so then is it safe to say that this essentially means that comedians and creators will be held to a higher standard the moment they monetize content?
So of course, see, like I said, advertising rules and regulations have been applied on multiple brands as well. So like I just repeating myself, like for example, in the case of companies, right, when you're advertising a certain product, you have certain guidelines that you have to follow with respect to advertisements as well. I think the similar expectation is being expected from creators, from content creators, including comedians as well. So they are going to be expected to fulfill the same, just like another, product that is being advertised.
Okay, then Roshni, how should comedians and content platforms navigate this space now? Will, as a
Mhm.
result, self-censorship become inevitable?
Yes, of course. So, for example, these companies and advertisers have been expected to put up self-declaration forms on a certain website, and they also have to fulfill to the ISKI guidelines. Likewise, even influencers have to follow the same for social media advertising or social media, regulation of content. I think the same applies to comedians and content creators as well. We cannot always hide under the ambit of it being parody or satire or humor. There have to be certain rules and regulations applicable. Like I said, freedom of speech doesn't come free. There are reasonable restrictions to it, and we have to fulfill those reasonable restrictions. They are also as a part of the article of Constitution.
Okay, very well said. According to you, what role should social media guidelines play in regulating commercial speech while preserving free
Mhm.
expression at the same time?
So there are already guidelines in place, specifically for influencers and for social media advertising. They've been provided by ASCII, which is the Advertising Standards Council of India as well. And that primarily puts across the four primary, rules and regulations that they have to follow, which are already available online on their website as well. And likewise, if you also additionally, look at the basic rules and regulations that are under the freedom of speech reasonable limitations, that it should not be against the sovereignty of the state, it should not be against the sovereignty of the country, it should not affect the friendly relations of the country, and it should not be against public welfare, and should not create any kind of riots or so on and so forth. I'm sure all these guidelines are already present. So I'm sure if you fulfill those basics, I don't think that should be a problem. I mean, thoughtful satire, nuanced humor is all has always been a part of Bollywood as well as a lot of filmmaking and content creation. So I'm sure that can be very easily be achievable, and it's more necessary as of today.
Right, right. More necessary as of today. I would like to actually continue with that point. Are public apologies, as mandated by the Supreme
Mhm.
Court, enough to help address the impact of offensive content, according to you?
So public apology is probably just the first step. Beyond that, I think it becomes a more of a self-responsibility, an individual responsibility of how you look at, how you really take it forward, and how you act upon your actions, how they are after the apology primarily. If you're going to look at just the apology aspect of it, I think that's not enough. There definitely have to be enough action-oriented measures that have to be taken into account.
Okay, okay. Then I also want to ask you, what are the challenges in defining the line between acceptable humor and harmful commercial speech? Also, according to you, I would be very interested to know if, how do you look at humor? Can humor be looked at objectively or subjectively? And where does this rule fit in then?
So there is no line really to draw. There's no line that we can draw whether something is acceptable or not acceptable. To be very honest, this is primarily perspective. Every person has different, moral compass, like I always say. So it's always tilted towards different degrees of angles. What happens is that if you are primarily, your of course your ethical background also plays a lot into this, and how much is acceptable to you as humor. So, for example, if something is not acceptable to me as humor, may be humorous for another person. But this doesn't really help us really formulate that line that someone can cross or not. That is the reason why every case has to be dealt with separately. If something has been written and if some content has been written, I would always recommend that they can get it vetted by a lawyer or get it checked from someone who can probably give them a 360-degree viewpoint as to what will not be harmful for the public at large. We have to always
Right.
look at the public at large from a very broader perspective rather than from a minuscule, narrow-minded perspective, wherein we're only looking at one person or two persons or probably a small group of people's perspective. And especially if you're in the same space, so if comedians are only discussing it among themselves, they will find everything humorous, right? Because they're intending it from that perspective. But if
Right,
they
Roshan.
also include other people, then maybe they can have a different point of view.
Right, right. You've given us many points to ponder upon, but thank you so much for helping us
Yes.
discuss this, this issue and this subject with great detail. Thank you a lot.